Hi, everyone. This is Jacqui Cooper with CryptoMom2 Talk Show, and I want to thank everyone for hopping on this episode and also remind everyone to like and subscribe. There are a lot of great topics coming up, and I am very excited to be sharing with everyone. Before I get into introducing my special guest that I'm so excited to have on, I want just to share for those that might not know more about me, a little bit about my background. I have had a very diverse career. So my initial career path was started in law, and I sort of have twisted back around by doing crypto consulting now on the, not the financial side in terms of advising you in terms of what to invest in, because these shows are not financial advice, they are educational, but more just how to organize your information. But I'll talk about that a little bit later. I navigated after law into special education, and I'm in the elementary side and I'm loving it. But I also realized as I started to learn more about my journey on the blockchain that this space is wide. There's so much creativity. There's so many things that are changing and evolving. And it really was important from the education side to kind of share what I was learning so that way others could also learn. And I've been interviewing people all around the world, and I'm really excited to have on a special guest that I actually heard speak at the Bitcoin conference in Miami Beach. Natalie, thank you so much for being on. How are you doing today?
Hey, thank you so much for having me. I am doing really well, a little bummed about, the volatility that I'm seeing in the markets, but it's a great accumulation time. So I'm also happy about that.
That's very true. So I know your background is so immense, and I want to do it justice. So why don't you go ahead and just share with everyone who's listening a little bit about, your own personal journey, because I'm all about stories, and I know that you've had a very interesting career path as well. So why don't you go ahead and share?
Sure. Well, that's very kind of you. My background is really in media. I was a broadcast journalist for more than 10 years, but I like to start my story even further than that because I think, the product in many ways of our upbringing. And I'm an immigrant. I'm the daughter of immigrants. My parents were raised in Poland, in Eastern Europe, which was under a communist regime. And they know what it's like to have a very oppressive system in which there's no social mobility. And so my mom, especially, she always dreamt about coming to the United States. She dreamt the American dream. She wanted to go somewhere where her children could get a good education and where there was potential to move up and be able to, take care of your family in the future. And so my family, it took them so long to be able to come. My parents were in their late 30s, early 40s when they were finally able to come to the US, and they started over from scratch. And I really admire their work ethic and their courage to come to a country where they didn't know the language, they didn't have connections, and they basically said, we're going to start over because this is the potentially a much better life for our children. And so I watched them work really, really hard. I was always instilled with just that sense of you have to work hard and you have to get a good education. Those are the only two things that will matter. And ever since I was little, I was really drawn to media because we watched a lot of television, news, movies to help learn English, really.
Yeah,
So like
yeah.
that was really our pastime. We would always have movies and television and news on. So I sort of began to dream of being in that industry. And it's funny because my parents, being immigrants, and I've talked to so many other immigrants, like they were like, be a doctor, be a lawyer, you have to have something with financial security. But at the time, everyone watched news, everyone
Yeah.
watched television. This was the 90s, like appointment television, 5:30, 6:30, millions of eyeballs. It was a very lucrative career in addition to what I believe to be a very noble profession. So I thought, well, I'll go into, TV. I'll be able to make money. And of course, just as I enter the industry, it sort of like turns on its head as far as a business model because the digital economy started. And now you have YouTubers and you have, social media news feeds, and like they're competing for advertising dollars with all these online entities. And so what went from a lucrative career actually went to one where I was making less than my like high school internship when I started. But I entered into the working world just as the financial crisis had struck our country. And that was a really pivotal moment for me as well, because my parents, who had worked so hard to be able to finally afford a down payment, a mortgage on their first home in the United States, they lost everything. I lost everything. And, none of the working class saw this coming, and none of the working class got bailed out, but the big banks got bailed out, the big corporations. And so that left me with a feeling of frustration. And it left me with a feeling that the system is sort of rigged. It's rigged against people like my family who work hard and pay their taxes and play by the rules. And it's rigged in favor of the people who are at the top and the people who are politically connected. And
Mhm.
so you can imagine that as I'm starting my journalism career, I have a little bit of a fire under me because I want to hold these people accountable. And I had
Yeah.
this sort of, I don't know, I had like a axe to grind with the people in power. And it took me until I really learned about Bitcoin to fully understand what I was so angry and frustrated about. And I would witness and document as a reporter this growing polarization, this growing frustration, people feeling like they're left behind, like they don't have a seat at the table while the rich got richer. And so I'm watching all of this play out. I'm already feeling it from my family. And then bam, I learned about Bitcoin. And it was just this pivotal moment for me. I mean, I've said this on other shows. Reading the Bitcoin Standard really changed my life because I was never taught all of the things that I learned through that book and my subsequent reading. I didn't understand that there was another economic theory, that we don't have to print all this money. I learned what money printing actually is, and I learned what hard money is. And I came to fully appreciate that when you connect the dots, all of these problems that I was reporting on and that my family suffered were really because our financial system is so broken and so manipulated, and there's a potential fix. And the last thing I want to say about that is, over the course of my 10 years as a reporter, not only was I witnessing all of this play out and witnessing us getting more and more divided, but I began to feel what most people felt, which is that like there's not a lot of hope for the future. Everything just seems to get worse. I would just be doing the same stories every year. Poverty's increasing, homelessness ballooning. Oh, this guy's pledging this much money. Well, it's spent somewhere, someone gets it, but we have a growing problem. This guy promises to fix it by getting elected. He blames this guy. I mean, it was all like cyclical and the same. And I didn't have a lot of hope for the future. And then when I learned about Bitcoin, my whole attitude changed because I felt like this parallel system exists that is completely peaceful. It's based on the truth of mathematics and computer science that cannot be manipulated, cannot be controlled or coerced. And we do have the ability to rebuild our financial system in a way that could be more inclusive and fair. And that is my mission now, to help people understand that system and help them take advantage of potentially being able to, gain security in terms of their finances. And so in a long-winded way, I feel like I was predisposed to really appreciate Bitcoin a long time ago.
So you shared so much, and I want to kind of break it down because there might be individuals who are just new to this whole equation and they just won't understand. So let's go back to like how you talked about money and the Bitcoin standard and just hard money, things like that. Go ahead and just share some definitions. So if someone is listening for the first time and is Bitcoin curious and not Bitcoin savvy, they can understand a
Sure.
little bit more about what you were sharing.
Yeah. And I do want to share that I feel for all the people who are just super skeptical about Bitcoin. They don't get it. They think we're, kind of cuckoo on Twitter because we're so fervent about our passion. But look, many of us, we use money every single day, but we don't think about what it really is. And we
Yeah.
don't think about what's backing it or how it's created. So I always like to kind of start there because, again, learning about Bitcoin helped me really learn about money. And money primarily serves three functions, or has three important properties that we need to talk about. One is a store of value, to be able
Right.
to maintain its value and hopefully increase value in the future so that you can make plans, you can invest, you can save, you can make decisions for your future. Number two is a medium of exchange. So we use it, we transact with it, and everyone accepts it. And then an offshoot of that, a unit of account. So things are priced in a certain good. And for most people, that's money. That's the US dollar in much of the world, even in other countries. And so I think that when we break it down, we start to notice that there are some problems with our money, what we know is money. So in the US, we use the US dollar, but can you just put your dollar in the bank account and have it be a great store of value that increases purchasing power over time? No, unfortunately not. At one point, when things were a little bit different, that was possible. But I think most people don't even realize that there were decades ago where you could actually take your US dollars, your paper bills, go to a bank, and you could exchange it for gold.
That's
Our
right.
US dollar used to be backed by a scarce commodity and something that can't easily be produced, which was gold. And many people don't know, and I didn't until I learned about Bitcoin, that in 1971, we severed that gold tie permanently. And we said, we're going off the gold standard. And now we're just based on paper. We're putting our faith in the US government, basically issuing this currency. Medium of exchange, well, we all exchange dollars. We're pretty comfortable with it and everything's priced in dollars. But Bitcoin essentially is trying to address the fact that we don't right now have a place where we can put our money, put our hard work value, put our labor, and make it last into the future, make the value continue into the future without essentially taking risk. So what our system has basically dissolved into is one where people have to earn their money twice. That's what Saifedean actually writes in his book. You have to earn it in your job once, but then the purchasing power is being eroded because they keep creating more and more money and handing it out to corporations in the form of easy loans. So now you have to take that money and you have to put it in, well, stocks, bonds. You have to kind of play the risk and try to become a portfolio manager on the side, or hire one to do it for you because you can't put your money in the bank. And so Bitcoin is, in my opinion, the best savings technology that has ever been invented, because Satoshi Nakamoto, who is the brilliant programmer that created Bitcoin, said that there will only ever be 21 million coins, and that no one will control the supply. It will never, you can't just expand it in the same way that our Federal Reserve and all our policymakers say, okay, we're going to create 60 more trillion dollars and send you all helicopter money for whatever cause we deem necessary. And that's really important, because the more that our money supply expands, every dollar in that money supply is worth less. And that's really the crux of money printing. The two most important things I've learned about money printing are, number one, as you expand the supply, you dilute the value for everyone. And number two, as you expand the supply, it is disproportionately allocated and offered to people at the top and the closest to the policymakers and the people in Washington, as opposed to the working class and the people who may need it the most. And that creates an imbalance in society. It creates more and more wealth concentration. It creates these entities that are too big to fail. And so now we have this thing that's been created, programmed through computer science and through decades of research and development, that is scarce, that no one can control. It is decentralized around the whole entire world. It is a supercomputer network in the same way that the internet has no, headquarters, and you can take down the internet in China and it still exists, in every other country. So Bitcoin is the same in that sense. And I think that this is where you start to realize that Bitcoin is this scarce asset that now can also be used as a medium of exchange. So we're getting into that transactional mode. And in the future, many of us envision that it could potentially be a unit of account where things are priced in Bitcoin. We go on the Bitcoin standard. And so, you learn about sort of these things like money printing, the history of money, the history of the gold backing of the dollar. And you start to appreciate that Bitcoin was really invented to address all of these issues that all come down to money. They all are related to money and how we transact and measure value in society.
Yeah, no, I agree with you on so many levels in terms of what you're sharing. And I also love how you're able to not simplify, because again, everything you said was very complex, but make it understandable in a way that someone who might not have initially been exposed to some of these philosophies would be able to understand. And so when you are going out and talking with groups, because I know that that's part of your passion, is to reach out to conferences and companies as well as educational groups and that type of thing. How do you structure your talks? I mean, because again, we're both educators and we're both, passionate about using media for the good in terms of making sure people understand, stay safe, and are aware. So how do you structure? Because there's all different levels of knowledge.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you so much for your kind words. I mean, I truly see it as my mission and my calling to help people really understand and appreciate Bitcoin. And I think to answer your question, it kind of really depends on the group and the people that I'm talking to, because I think that in order to really relay the message of Bitcoin and communicate it effectively, you have to hone in on what the person actually cares about or how it might impact them. And that's really different depending on whether you're talking to a political group, or you're talking to young students, or you're talking to a high net worth firm that's representing clients with tons of money. But I always boil things down to sort of how Bitcoin solves a greater problem. And I think that no matter what age you are, no matter what income level you're at, no matter what your political belief is, you do want to envision a future where the playing field is a little bit more level, where people can sort of contribute and have access to the economy in a way that's fair, where they can like provide value and be measured based on their value and their merit. And we don't really have that right now. We have this very unfair system that has led to a lot of, like we mentioned earlier, polarization, people feeling left behind. And I think that both the people at the bottom and top of, the economic sort of ladder want a world where more people have access to economic opportunity and can take care of their family and plan for their future, especially those who, most of us work hard and just want to be able to take care of our family. I feel like it's just a universal, we're just trying to fulfill these basic needs, which is to take care of our family, to connect. And money has caused so many issues and I think distortions within that. And so I just like to point that out in all of my discussions is, we live in a time that has more wealth concentration than ever, where the middle class is slowly declining, where, the prices of things have skyrocketed. And that touches everyone from the billionaire who's trying to buy their next yacht, to the student that's trying to afford college the next year, to the couple that's trying to buy their first house. And we don't need to live in a world where things are getting more and more expensive every single year while your money loses value and you have to play a risk game. There's a future that we can envision and build in which your money actually gains value every year because it's scarce and no one can control the supply. And things are really based on the value that someone presents to an economy based on whatever goods or services or companies that they create. And so I don't know, no matter who I'm talking to, I like to kind of hone in on those more universal human elements that I think touch all of us with Bitcoin and are really inspiring to me in terms of the world we can build.
Yeah. So I know that you and I were down at the Bitcoin conference and the exhibit hall was huge. And I know you were talking to a lot of the thought leaders that were there. Was there any one company or any one segment that kind of really connected with you? I know for me, I was surprised at, I'm a Bitcoin miner, but I was surprised at how many Bitcoin mining companies there were. I was also surprised at how many banks were there. I was surprised at the point of sale operations that were there. Like you said, Bitcoin can be used now to purchase services and products. And so there were so many companies that were there that were thinking creatively how to create that ecosystem so Bitcoin could be used. And unfortunately, we didn't have the president of El Salvador come, but, again, countries are adopting Bitcoin. So, there were so many takeaways from that conference. Was there something that really kind of struck you?
Well, I completely agree with you. I mean, it's just amazing to see how quickly the space is growing and how it's really being taken seriously now by these legacy institutions. And so that was really inspiring to me. The year prior to that, 2021, was my first Bitcoin conference. And I thought that was at a massive scale. And then the one this year was twice as big. I mean,
Exactly.
I couldn't even believe it. And so that was really inspiring to me. I think the one thing that I'm going to be watching and something that I'm very excited for is all the developments around the Lightning Network that is going to move us from that sort of store of value phase of monetization that we're in with Bitcoin to the medium of exchange and being able to send value from one place in the world to another instantly and without a third party, and just harnessing the power of that. Lightning Labs is doing a lot building in this space. There's venture capital that's pouring investment into expanding the Lightning Network. Cash App had exciting announcements, Strike with Jack Mallers. I mean, this is a space that I think is going to quickly grow, and it's going to benefit everybody, everyone in the entire world. So I'm really excited for that and curious to see what announcements will be made and what sort of traction we're going to get in terms of growth.
I agree with you. I want to mention to everyone who's listening that right before the Bitcoin conference in April, I actually released my first book called The Bitcoin Cinderella, and I was really excited about writing it because I don't think I shared this with you, but in the traditional Cinderella story, the mom dies. In this Cinderella story, the mom actually, I took a little bit of literary license here. She was one of the original blockchain engineers that worked with Satoshi. And so I have her going out into the metaverse to do another, problem solving adventure. And so Samantha, who's the Cinderella, is on a quest to find her mom and learns about Bitcoin as she journeys to find her mom. And when she meets the prince, it's actually in the metaverse, and there's a whole series of things that go on with the wallet. The prince has a part of it, she has a part of it, and when it opens, that's how they know that they were meant to be together. But I'm not going to give away the rest of the secrets.
I love it.
The story. Yeah, it was a lot of fun to write. And for everyone who's listening, if you're not sure about how to get started, the book was designed for you, both for you that are experienced but want to maybe talk to your kids about the blockchain, as well as those that are new, to kind of get your feet wet in terms of what some of this terminology is all about. And then you can reach out to myself or some of the other resources that I have, so that way you can kind of actually learn how to get started. I want to make sure that you mention your website, so that way people can reach out directly to you. So how would they reach out to you if they want you to come and speak?
Sure. Yeah. So I have a website that I recently launched called talkingbitcoin.com, which pretty much encapsulates what I do. I talk about Bitcoin on my podcast and on media outlets, and I go to companies and organizations and schools, and I try to talk about Bitcoin. Really, my goal is to simplify the message, help people understand, answer questions that people have, and just spread the message to the greater public using my media background. So if you know anyone who wants to learn about Bitcoin, please have them check it out, talkingbitcoin.com, and check out my Twitter page at Nat Brunell, as well as my podcast, Coin Stories.
Yep. And for everyone who's listening, if you don't have paper and pen, don't worry. All the links will be embedded in the blog below. So that way, all you have to do is come back to this episode, and you'll be able to reach out to find out more about Bitcoin at all the wonderful places that she's mentioned. Any last minute thoughts that you would like to share? Because I am, as I mentioned to you when we were offline, I've been blown away by your own personal career, as well as, everything that I've heard when you've been on different stages. And I really appreciate your being on the show. But any last minute message that you want to share with our listeners?
Well, thank you so much. I am really inspired and really grateful for the acceptance that I've received in the Bitcoin community, because it truly is full of some of the most intelligent and caring people I've ever met in my whole life, who want to see the world go in a much better, more hopeful direction. And it inspires me so much. And it gave me the courage to leave a profession that I knew for 10 years and venture out on my own, which has been quite an adventure and a much better journey than I expected it to be. But really, my message is just, we all want the same thing. We want a better future. We want a future in which we can take care of our kids and our parents and our families and the people that we care about. And right now, I know that things are probably a little bit anxiety driving with the volatility in all the markets. It doesn't matter if you're in Netflix right now, or Amazon, or the housing market, or Bitcoin. We're all kind of a little bit stressed out, right? There's this greater macro environment that we're all impacted by. But I just hope people sort of zoom out and remember that things don't change in a day. Things don't, battles are not won or lost. And we just need to give this a little bit more time. It's a growing technology network in the same way that the internet, when it first came out in the 90s, it was very misunderstood. People did not see how it would transform their lives and businesses and means of communication. And Bitcoin is trying to do the same thing, but with money. It's trying to decentralize it. It's trying to offer a little bit more access and freedom. And there's going to be some pain points along the way. But don't get into Bitcoin thinking you're going to sell it in a week or a month or even a year. This is a long-term savings technology. And I know it's volatile. I know it's hard to stomach some of these moments, but I just really hope people remember the big picture, because what we're trying to create is a financial order that's really more fair and really more inclusive and allows people from every background to have the chance to earn money for their future. So that's kind of my last 2 cents. I know things could get a little hectic in the markets, but I hope people remember to just, to just hodl and take care of the people that they love.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely agree with you about the hodling side, because for me, I pulled out my, again, everyone, you have to do it based upon your own, personal decisions. But for me, I pulled out my retirement and I put it into 2 Bitcoin mining rigs. And I'm, like you said, I'm holding for the long term, because I know the appreciation that will happen is not in the short term, it's in the long term. And everything that you said, for me, I hold so true. I just will mention that these shows are not financial advice. You have to invest at your own risk, but we do appreciate, your being on and listening and educating yourself. Again, thank you so much for being on. Everyone, be kind to yourself, be kind to others. Remember, we're all interconnected. We are all one world. And I look forward to talking with you on our next episode. Thank you so much and have a great day.